What I'm about to say is actually happening in real life. We have a Democrat mayor launching police raids against business owners who've spoken to the FBI about her misconduct allegations. This woman is launching police raids. Is this not a threat to our republic and a threat to the American way of life as we know it? Where is the outrage over this? We're not seeing it to the degree that we should be. Is the Dalton, Illinois mayor, Tiffany Henyard, currently being investigated by the FBI for allegations of gross misuse of city funds and weaponizing her powers as mayor against businesses that are unwilling to support her. Let's talk about the mayor real quick. She takes a salary of $300,000 as the mayor in a city with a population of 23,000 people where the median income is 24 grand. She takes this salary even as a number of city vehicles are in imminent danger of being repossessed for non-payment, amongst many other financial discrepancies between what should be and what is with the city's budget. She has very close ties to the Dalton Police Department, shown by her typical security detail consisting of several unmarked SUVs, all the Secret Service. These details, which often consist of officers pulled on their what would have been their off time, are being made to run errands in addition to just running her private security, which ends up costing the city hundreds of thousands of dollars in police overtime pay. Now, you work overtime, you should be paid for it, but these are officers that could be on the streets, keeping the people of Dalton safe, relegated to what are effectively highly trained, uniformed, badged personal assistants. That's a waste. Her close relationship to the Dalton Police Department is further seen in her use of them to forcibly shut down businesses who've chosen not to support her as mayor. They've justified this by delaying the approval or denial of business licenses to get them on the charge of operating a business without a license. Now, we don't have every piece of information on everything going on here, but current evidence is pointing to the city being unwilling to work with these business owners to avoid them being forcibly shut down through these police raids. And the mayor, Mayor Henyard, has plenty of shady circumstances around her, even disregarding this. Amongst everything else, it's not an honest or just look to have the donations to a charity run that has your name on it shut down by your state's attorney general due to an unwillingness on you and your group's part to disclose your fundraising totals or how those funds are being used and have been used. The mayor's also gone on a public tirade, this was earlier in the month, questioning why her fellow leaders were questioning her since she's the leader. It's a quote from her. She referred to herself as the leader and accusing them of utilizing racial and gender bias as the source of this investigation into her spending. She thinks she should not be looked into at all. How is it that in the United States, we have a criminal justice system that allows a person 100 trips into our criminal justice system, 100 times caught and released, and it's only arguably made this person worse? I don't care if you're a Republican or Democrat or Libertarian or Green. This is a problem, and we need to sit down and talk through this. We need to figure out some solutions here. The story is a couple years old, so it's a safe bet that these numbers have gotten worse. But we have a self-declared professional booster picked up on her 100th arrest as of June 28th, 2022, flipped around and released without bail more or less immediately. The Manhattan judge, Charlotte Davidson, had determined that the charges against this person, shoplifting $125 worth of goods from the CVS, were not eligible for bail under the state's then fairly fresh 2019 bail reforms. These reforms prevent bail from being set for most people charged with misdemeanors or nonviolent felonies, while allowing for most violent felonies. That terminology in the literature has me a little concerned as well. So this person had failed to appear for court 27 times previously on this catch and release and was still allowed to turn around and walk back out on the streets. This is another symptom of a national criminal justice issue that desperately needs attention. As ridiculous as this case is, there are plenty that are far worse. We have violent criminals with a long history walking out of a courtroom, and on the other side, people picked up for first offense minor charges who get stuck in jail for weeks or months just waiting for a trial that may or may not come. Amongst other aspects, the bail system needs some desperate attention. The fact that for a lot of crimes, you can just pay your way out of jail until your trial is ridiculous. This allows offenders to pay their bail and vanish, avoiding justice potentially indefinitely because they can afford to pay the bail. Does that actually make sense to anyone? I can't imagine it would. If someone's committed a crime that is so heinous that their bail has to be set at millions of dollars, maybe bail isn't the best choice. It's not the best option for that. The lack of consistency for punishments on people that do go to trial and get convicted is also deeply concerning. It'll vary state to state, of course, but using Texas as an example, a first-time offender picked up and arrested on a marijuana charge, possession of 4 ounces, could get a felony and see 2 years in a state jail. But someone arrested for their first DWI is likely to only get a misdemeanor and very likely won't even see jail time. I would argue, my opinion, driving under the influence is a far more heinous crime than carrying a quarter pound of marijuana in your car. Your mileage and opinion may vary, but I would like to see a revamp of our prosecution system as well. The fact that there are places that won't even arrest you, must just charge you for shoplifting is ridiculous. The state of California, most places won't even dispatch police unless things are getting too violent. And I see the argument of, if they need food and they can't afford it, they should steal it. And, I understand it. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I understand it. But if you look at what's commonly being shoplifted, it's not exactly essentials. It's, makeup, TVs, electronics, what have you. So I don't think that argument really holds as much water as it should. I would also like to see a change in our prison system and really focus on rehabilitation when it's possible, but a deprivatization of our systems as well. If it's a state or federal crime, it should be a state or federal jail. The for-profit prison system is an absurd idea. Unfortunately, it encourages harsher prison sentences for crimes which may not necessarily deserve it, just to pad the pockets of corrupt judges and corrupt sheriffs, law enforcement officers. That goes up and down the whole chain pretty much. I want to clarify, I'm not anti-police, but I'm not going to pretend there aren't bad cops out there. There's bad people everywhere. This change needs to start at the federal level. Why has Congress refused to enact meaningful criminal justice reform? You've got mayors launching politically targeted police raids or career criminals making 100+ trips to the county jail, and Congress just sits there and speeches the days away. Are you okay with this? Because I'm not. I'm absolutely not. We need to see implementation and enforcement of better checks and balances to keep police forces from being weaponized and monopolized by elected officials. We need to see a system that works to prevent career criminals from having careers in crime. I would argue we need to see a federal legalization of marijuana, at the very least medicinally. I have no personal qualms with recreational. We need to have a system that is willing to rehabilitate and readjust those that can be, so they can be reintegrated with a normal society. We also need a system that properly punishes those that have committed crimes that makes them ineligible for that. We need to see measures to completely deprivatize the prison system. It's not as privatized as it could be, but the fact that it is at all is unacceptable. We need a system that is truly impartial, that does not care who you are. You're going to be handled in court the same way. You're going to be prosecuted the same way. It needs to handle a person the same way, regardless of their resources and their background, and stick unwaveringly to the policies and procedures that have been laid out by our founding fathers. Kind of going through that list, line item by item. The fact that a mayor has been able to use her city's police department as an unrestricted private security force is ridiculous. I could see using them for public events. That makes sense. But why does she, or really any mayor for that matter, why do they need them perpetually? And her willingness to use these officers at her disposal as a political tool, pressuring opponents out of their livelihoods, is completely contrary to the way this country is meant to be run. It's not exactly at the level of secret police, but it's dangerously close. Any system that allows for catch and release of career criminals, as we've seen it, is horrifically broken. Even if the crime is no more serious than shoplifting, which, by the way, the aforementioned amount of $125 is still a Class A misdemeanor in the state of New York. But regardless of what that crime is, 100 arrestable offenses without a real conviction is absurd. That shows that this person has a complete, blatant disregard for the law and a complete unwillingness to abide by it. So why are we letting them walk? At this point, I also don't see a great reason why marijuana should still be illegal, especially since alcohol is legal. If you're against one or you're against all of them, then that's fine. That can be your opinion. But the pick and choose doesn't sit well with me. And the prohibition on cannabis itself has its roots in political corruption and lobbying, something I'm trying very hard to fight against here. So it is long overdue that we close this talking point out by legalizing it at the federal level. Many crimes committed should not necessarily preclude a person from rejoining society as a productive, law-abiding member. Ex-cons have this bias against them. For some crimes, it's warranted. For others, it's not. But a big part of their issue with reintegration is this focus in our prison system on solely punishing these people. And they've committed crimes that they should be punished for that. But a lot of these people could very easily be rehabilitated for easier reintegration into society. This would benefit the ex-cons as much as it would the rest of us. It's more people in the workforce, if nothing else. So we take these people who've messed up, as long as they haven't messed up royally, and we do what we can to set them up for being productive members of society once we get them out of prison. There's some more minutiae to this that I'll touch on this later, but that's the cliff notes for it. The privatized jails and prisons, it's just such a ridiculous concept. I cannot believe that it's as widespread as it is, and it's not even all that widespread. It's something like 8% of our incarcerated people are in privatized systems, but you end up with these people who are, they've committed a crime, they get sent to jail, and then they're billed sometimes upwards of $250 a day while they're there for their stay in prison, which leaves them hopelessly indebted on their release. There's also, I found while looking more and more into this, there are pay-to-stay jails where you have the financial resources, you can pay for more pleasant living conditions in a prison that's meant to be punitive. It's meant to, it's not meant to be a fun time. You shouldn't be able to pay your way into nicer conditions. Some of these actually also let you pay to serve your sentence on the weekends and in the evenings, so it doesn't interrupt your day to day. And that's just absolutely ridiculous. I mean, I'm a capitalist through and through, but this transcends the concept of, the free market that is capitalism and pushes well into the bounds of blatant outright greed, and that's not okay. That said, welcome to Medley's Minute on GCD Network. That was kind of a hard and fast intro, but we're going to be trying that for a while. I'm Stefan Medley, running as an independent candidate in the U.S. House of Representatives, Texas 10th Congressional District. Keep this part of the intro brief for today and subsequently. If you'd like to learn more about me and my campaign, I encourage you to watch my previous podcasts on GCD Network. Check out my website, stefanmedley.com, where I have my stances listed as well as a direct link to those previous shows. Also, we've got yard signs in, so if you're in District 10, you want a yard sign, fill out that contact form. I will hand deliver it to you personally. Primaries are they're right around the corner officially, but the early voting is going on right now. So I do want to bring up this point again. Because I've chosen to run as an independent candidate, I'm not on that primary ballot, and in order to get on the general ballot, I'll need 500 signatures from District 10 constituents who have not voted in the primaries. So once the primary is over, if that's you and you're willing to sign, fill out that contact form or reach out on any of my various social medias, and I will come get your signature personally. I'm happy to be boots on the ground through this whole campaign. It's another rough subject today if the intro didn't cue you into that, so that warrants another dad joke. I've got a long list of those to go through. I have no intention of stopping anytime soon, so buckle up. Was fired this week from the banana factory. Kept throwing out the bent ones. All right, back into the meat potatoes. I want to touch mainly on the obvious corruption in our criminal justice system as a whole, my stance on marijuana legalization. And I did want to touch more on the privatization, but while I was doing my research, I was finding more and more and more. So I'm going to come back to that in a later show, just because I'm not happy with the amount of research that I have done. I want to give you all as informative a stance as I can. So we'll come back to that point probably next week. So today it's just criminal justice system as a whole, corruption within, and marijuana legalization. So criminal justice system, it's pretty screwed up. the way it is. I don't imagine this take at this point is a particularly controversial one, regardless of what part of the political spectrum you're on. It's not good. One side, you've got people who've committed heinous crimes getting relatively light sentences, and on the other, you've got people spending years in jail for comparatively minor crimes. There's also the plea bargain system, which is something that we've heard thrown around for a long while, something that I will admit I did not fully understand what all went into that. But the fact that you can plea guilty no contest to a lesser charge to get effectively off scot-free on a more serious charge means you have people that are walking around that should have, harsher charges on their criminal record, and they don't because it's not necessarily an accurate example, but they got off on the DWI case because they pled guilty to the speeding ticket. You also end up with this, there's this unspoken understanding in our current system that many cases involving only minor crimes, both minor and minor, things like vandalism, shoplifting, minor assaults, they tend to just be adjourned over and over and over until the complaining witness, who are often the victim or victims, are tired of wasting their time and money. So they stop showing up and the case gets dropped, which means that we end up with many criminals that should have a record but don't. Similar vein, kind of on the opposite end, you've got unacceptably lenient punishment for crimes like murder or rape. Federally speaking, on paper, someone convicted of second-degree murder must serve any term of years or life imprisonment without parole. First-degree murder gets you death in aggravating circumstances, or that same life imprisonment without parole. Practically, because of the way the system is executed, the numbers aren't anywhere near that. The life without parole and the death are few and far between. You end up with a median time served as of 2018 was the most recent figure I could find, about 17 and a half years. Murder, by my understanding of the definition of the legal term murder, is never excusable. Homicide can be legally and morally excusable. Situations of self-defense are a great example of that. But murder implies nothing but ill intent. With that said, if you're convicted of murder, the punishment should be harsher. If someone is murdered, they are being deprived of their right to life, which is not acceptable. That's exactly contrary to the Constitution. If nothing else, you want to look at the Constitution as the top law of the land, which it is. We've got a right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. You take away someone's right to life, then that's unconstitutional. That's not that open to interpretation, I would say. On to the next heinous crime. This is not one I enjoy talking about, but it needs to be talked about. Rape should net someone life without parole by federal law, and also that's my opinion. That you rape someone, you go to prison for the rest of your life. However, because that is only the federal punishment for it, and the federal punishment is only applicable if the offense occurred in federal areas or in cases of displacement between states, it comes down to the state's laws for how these cases are handled. Because of the variance in those, the median time served is only about 7.2 years, 7.25 years, which is also absolutely unacceptable. This is another one of those crimes that there's not a single circumstance in which that's justified. My tentative fix for this would be to first establish inconsistency between the states regarding punishment. There are a lot of things in our legal system where the states can be more strict than the federal government on something, but not less strict. In the case of firearms, for example, there's this big case going on with the Texas Suppressor Act because Texas is trying to make those unregulated items, but the federal government regulates them. So there's some back and forth there because Texas can't technically get away with being less strict than the federal government. It's a bit more complicated than that, but it's the summary. So that said, if the feds have a punishment for a crime, the state should not be able to go below that federal bar. We should be able to exceed it if we want, but that should be the bare minimum punishment for really anything at the federal level. I'm using murder and rape as the examples, but that should be universally applicable. If there's federal law for it, that's the minimum punishment level that's defined. Next part of the fix is we need to ensure that our judicial systems are set up in such a way that the accused criminals are given the speedy trial that they are constitutionally guaranteed. Innocent until proven guilty extends to everyone, regardless of your personal opinions of that person. They are due the protections that the Constitution promises them, to fair handling all the way through their conviction. We also need to address the goals of incarceration as a whole. A convicted murderer is there as a punishment, as they should be. But on the other side, you've got someone arrested for personal possession of a controlled substance, and especially if it's their first time being arrested and sent to prison for this. They should be in prison both to punish them for the crime that they have committed, but we should also try to set them up for successful reintegration into society. I talked a bit about this in the intro, but we ought to give them a chance to get back on their feet and not fall back into the criminal lifestyle. Now, what they choose to do on release, that's their prerogative. If they opt to squander the chance that they've been given, that's on them at that point. Their subsequent trips behind bars can move further and further into the punishment side rather than the rehabilitation side. It's an ongoing thing at that point. Moving on to marijuana, I can't think of a good reason for it to be illegal at this point. The main reason it was originally looked at as being a controlled substance was lobbying efforts from the paper and textile companies. I can't remember off the top of my head what year that was happening, but they were threatened by the increasing prevalence of hemp as a substitute for the wood pulp paper and cotton. I think was the big one, but textiles, because it's cheap. You can grow a lot of it and you can get a lot out of what you grow. So these paper and textile companies lobbied legislators at the time, and it's been legal in varying degrees pretty much ever since. I said before, I'm a capitalist. I will stand by that to the day that I die. But if the only way that you can keep your product relevant is by lobbying against your competition, forcing legislature into place to make your competition illegal just on the basis of them being your competition, you've been outclassed. It is what it is. If that's what it takes, you're done. I'm sorry. Do better. What we've been left with because of these lobbying efforts, though, is now we have thousands of people behind bars for something that probably shouldn't have been regulated at least as harshly as it is in the first place. I'm in complete favor of recreational legalization. Medicinal would be a great start. If that's where we have to start first, that's fine by me. I don't really see it as being any worse than alcohol, grand scheme of things, especially if it is regulated like alcohol. I think that would take a lot of the criminal side out of it. We're not going to pretend that every drop of alcohol is consumed legally. Banning something doesn't make it inaccessible. That should be pretty universal knowledge. At this point. But if it's legal, then it makes less sense to get it illegally if you can get it legally. And then at that point, I'd say we just treat it like alcohol. You can't drive under the influence of it. Purchase age of 18 or 21 or whatever it's decided it is at that time. And we just treat it like another alcohol. But a C or an M on the ATF's acronym. But yeah, I could have a long drawn out discussion, but it'd be talking in circles at that point. There's no reason for it to be illegal at this point in time. We need to just close this talking point out entirely and move on. There's more important things we could put our energy into. That said, I have talked a little faster than I anticipated to, so I'm going to go ahead and give you all your closer dad joke, let you get on with your Sundays. I went to buy 12 bees from a beekeeper, 1 dozen bees. He counted and gave me 13. I said, "Sir, you've given me one too many. You gave me an extra." He said, "Don't worry about it. That's a freebie." Thank you for tuning in to Medley's Minute. I appreciate your willingness to spend some of your Sunday evening with me. I'll be on again next Sunday, March 3rd from 5 to 5:30 Central. Hope to see you then. Again, be sure to check out my website, stefanmedley.com. Follow me on X/Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. I'm on most of the medias at this point. Those are all linked on my website, stefanmedley.com as well. So please reach out on my website with questions and comments. Let me know what topics you want me to talk about. Future podcasts. Fill out that contact form. Let me know. I've got most of it, well, I've got all my issues that I've thought to put on there at this point, but if there's something you want to hear my stance on, then reach out and I'll throw it on there. Thank you again for your time and support. Y'all have a fantastic week. Once again, this has been Medley's Minute on GCD Network. Good night, y'all. Be kind. Stay tuned for Randolph's Corner coming up next.